Hello everyone, it's Fieler, and welcome to the third week of the second Forbidden Battleground, and I'm going to be doing the level 70 challenges for the Legend and the Mythical clears. So let's not waste any time, let's get into the Legend clear, and these are the characters I'm going to be using. So I tried for a little bit to use Oliver in place of Rachel in this strategy, but it's because my SR characters for Legend are just not that well built yet, I just could not get it done. But I did use the three other SR characters found in the Legend faction, which are Close, Serena, and Alfred. Close, I suppose, is a bit of a gray area for these guys because Close is a limited time character. However, if you don't have Close, you're going to have a really hard time with any sort of Legend challenge because there really isn't that many Legend healers aside from Close. The only other one is Wheeler, who of course makes this fight very trivial if you have Wheeler built up. But I think overall it's probably better for me to be using Close over Wheeler if I want this guy to be more accessible to more people. I don't think there's a whole lot to note with Landius, Rachel, or Close. Their builds are pretty standard. Serena is not class mastered, which makes this map a hell of a lot harder because if Serena was class mastered and I had runestones in her, this would actually make this a lot easier. Serena would be much better. She would have really high attack and she would be able to contribute to DPS, and she would also have 2 revives, which would make her actually really good for this fight. She would also have access to shield bash, so she would also be very useful for crowd control. But I don't have any of that, so Serena is really not going to be doing much in this fight, so she's just a warm body for most of the fight. And finally, I have Alfred, and Alfred is a character I think a lot of people sleep on. If you are a low budget or you don't have a very strong Yeless team, you might want to think about looking into Alfred because Alfred is very useful for PvE maps like this. Now, very important to note here is that Alfred is equipping Spirit Boots. They're only level 20, but the important thing is that he has a leveled up pair of Spirit Boots that allow him to move again after combat. This is going to be very important for him to be able to accomplish the role that he is performing here. Alright, let's get started with this Legend clear. So the Legend clear I feel like is one of the easier ones that we have to do because a lot of people have really strong Legend characters. Obviously if you use Listel on this map, it makes it much easier. And there's just a lot of other Legend characters that people have built, such as Night Mystery or Claret. So at the beginning I just put Beach Party up from Alfred. Rachel begins attacking the Minotaur. And you can see that I actually don't faction buff on the first turn, even though I would like to. But the important thing here is that because the right side of the map does not aggro on the first turn, you need to stay out of your threat ranges. So you can see the way I position my units, I'm standing just outside that Pegasus Knight's attack range, or the Dragon Knight's attack range. And by doing that, the right side will not aggro on this first turn, which I really don't want them to because there's no way my units are going to be able to take all of that punishment all at once. So the important thing here is that, you start taking out this Minotaur. Sometimes randomly Close can give immunities that will stop certain debuffs from happening, but I'm going to play this in a way that will show that that won't matter because I have Rachel and Close cleansing as needed if I need them to. So you can see right here that I take that stun off of Landius, and I believe I just resisted the Moby Down or Guard disable on Serena. But even if I hadn't, I would have dispelled it using Rachel. And even if I didn't have Rachel, I still could have used Close to dispel it. So here I'm just lining up in a way so that the Mist Dancer will be attacking my Landius. I want the Mist Dancer to attack Landius directly so that Serena will come guard Landius because I don't want Landius to be taking 3 hits on this enemy phase. There's no way my Landius are going to be able to take 3 hits. Meanwhile, Alfred's down there just doing his job. His Illustrial-like talent is just so valuable in PvE maps like this. He's just very good at running away. So right here you can see Landius is about to lose his first life. I can actually survive this if Blood Shield activates, but I don't. Obviously, I don't want to center my strategy around hoping that Blood Shield activates. So here I am just going to weaken this Flyer General while healing everybody up. And Serena is going to help poke this Hellhound a little bit. So I'm able to kill this Hellhound, so what that means is that I should be able to survive next enemy phase without much problem. Alfred's still leading them around, so I want to position Alfred in a way so that you do not trigger the spatial displacement from the Sheikah Mage. Obviously you don't want that happening, that is just going to create all kinds of chaos. And when you're using Alfred to kite around this map, you need to be very careful of that Sky Archer especially, because you need to remember that every other turn it's going to have aim up. So you need to add to its threat range basically. Alright, so now I need the enemies to get distracted again, because there's no way I'm going to be able to take all of them at this moment, so I need to back up my other units into the corner. So Rachel and Close are just going to heal up Landius here. Alfred is actually going to use Surf's Up, so thanks to the Spirit Boots I have equipped on him, I can Surf's Up and then just move away afterwards. So once again, Serena is taking the hit from the Mist Dancer, so that lets Landius have enough life left over to tank everything else on this map, or everything else that's going to come attack me. Here I actually get a Blood Shield. But I should know that I actually don't need it to survive here. So, but it is a very close call for me. So, depending on how strong your Landius is, you may or may not survive this, and you may need to rely on like Blood Shield or something to activate to pass this tanking check. But once this is over, like the rest of the map should be pretty easy to take care of, because right now I've already split the enemies into manageable chunks, and I should be able to take out these guys without any problem. And by the time the rest of them get back up here, I should be done cleaning these guys up. So of course, Close is going to heal Landius here. You gotta make sure Landius is healthy. So here I know that the Sky Archer is about to use aim, so I need to add 2 to its threat range. And I also need to consider how far I can move the next turn to get out of trouble. So if you have a better built Serena than I do, obviously like Serena with better stats is going to be able to contribute to DPS quite a bit, because Serena is actually pretty good offensively in PvE because of her incredibly high attack. And she has decent offensive soldiers, but as you saw, my Serena is not that well built. So she's kind of dead weight, aside from just taking she can take 1 hit for me, and that's it. And of course I don't have Serena's Revive unlocked. But right now, because there's only 2 enemies left over, it should not be a problem for me to take care of them. So Alfred is still down there, just distracting them. So thankfully Surf's Up is up again for Alfred, so that means I can actually attack and get the hell out of here. So that allows for this to be a deathless run. But if you need to, you could just let Alfred kite them around a bit more, and just let them die. I mean, because obviously, like if you're just looking to get the Yeless clear, it's okay if 1 unit dies. But here I'm just showing Alfred being able to survive this run, So I'm just saving Aurora Ring for when they get up here. So I get a clock here, but of course I am not going to be taking advantage of that clock. The one important thing is that when you start the map, you should start Rachel with Holy Word instead of Dark Reaper, because you want to be able to go Holy Word, Dark Reaper, and then Holy Word again. Assuming you don't get any clocks, obviously. So by doing this, Alfred is able to just lead them around a little bit more, and I can just sort of bait them in one at a time still. And you can pretty much just do this for a pretty extended period of time if you feel like your party is not strong enough to take on, any, 2 or more of them at a time. You can try to bait them one at a time at this point. But it is important for you to have a strong enough Landius to survive that initial assault. That is probably the most difficult part of this map. Just surviving that first initial wave of like huge onslaught of just really strong enemies. So here the Sheikah Mage finally does a spatial strike. I really don't need to worry about it. It really shouldn't put me in any sort of area where I would be in danger. And at this point, this map I think is mostly over. I just need to clean up the rest of these enemies here. And of course, if your Alfred is built enough, you can equip a Last Rites on him, and he can actually survive a hit from the Sky Archer if need be. So do keep that in mind, because that means you can just take a hit from the Sky Archer and then run away and then use First Aid with Alfred, and you can just continue kiting for a longer period of time. So if you have an Alfred that's more built than mine, he can definitely, and he can survive one hit from the Sky Archer or something like that, is actually very valuable. It will increase his ability to kite the enemy significantly. So here I just use Holy Word instead of Dark Reaper because I got that clock, and I don't believe Dark Reaper is supposed to be up yet. But with only 2 enemies left, this is just, there should be no issues whatsoever. One thing that really annoyed me is that at first I thought like I would have been able to bring Alfred and walk across the water that's on the left side of the map, but then I realized those are not water tiles, those are ice tiles. so I guess like when they were designing this map, they just decided we really need to screw over Alfred because he's such a broken unit normally. But we're gonna leave that all behind us because we were able to figure it out anyway. So Alfred's just kind of running around here. He doesn't really need to do anything anymore. If I had Alfred built a little bit more, he would be able to contribute to damage quite a bit, because Alfred's actually he's a decently strong character for PvE. I mean, he has pretty good soldier bonuses. He's decent. He does decent damage. He's decently tanky. He actually has like a 35% defense bonus or something on his troops, and of course, adding that to the aquatic defense bonus and the fact that Tide Masters have a defense bonus of their own, or even if you use Lizardmen, like Alfred can be decently tanky while also dealing a fair bit of damage. Unfortunately, PvE is pretty much where Alfred's going to be stuck for a while. So here, because I see the Lancer is moving towards attacking Landius, so I just have Serena guarding Landius. And of course, if your Serena is well built, she'll be able to counter the Lancer for a fair bit of damage as well. So if you have a different DPS other than Rachel, first off, I would highly recommend using Rachel here, because Rachel is just so versatile, being able to heal and DPS at the same time. And she's also magic damage, which is actually very useful here because there are some physically resistant enemies on this map, and it's easier to have a magical DPS take care of them. But you can replace Rachel with a different DPS if you need to, but just be aware that you need your close A to have a decent amount of healing output. Obviously, if you have Wheeler, that actually makes this map way easier. I decided not to use Wheeler, of course, because he's an SSR unit, SSR healer that not everybody necessarily might have at 6 stars, or even 4 or 5 stars, where he will be a little bit more useful. But Close, even though she's a limited character, she's available to many people. So that is going to be the Yeless clear. Hopefully that was useful. And let's move on to the Mythical clear. So let's take a look at the Mythical team I'm using here. Now the Mythical faction only has 3 SR and below characters, but I'm going to be using all of them. So unfortunately that means I'm forced to use 2 SSR characters if I want to be doing this challenge. In this case I'm going to be using Yulia and Zerda. However, I think there are many other ways you can clear this map, and I'm going to be suggesting some of them later on in this video. The equip sets on Yulia and Zerda should be pretty standard. I do feel that the Extreme Magic Bow on Zerda is almost required for this map because you need Zerda to attack into a Sky Archer at one point, and if you attack from range, you run the risk of Zerda killing herself. Of course, if that results in a double KO, from that you can just do a 4-man clear from there, and so it doesn't have to be required, but just know that you will not have a deathless run in that case. Almeida and Sophia also have pretty standard builds, but I think the only thing I feel the need to point out is that Almeida should be wearing a Sage's hat or the SSR equivalent if you have one. And Sophia is using a Juggler plushie here. I don't think it's absolutely required, but obviously it can make things much easier, and especially if your Yulia is not particularly strong. And finally we have Argis here. She's not very built for me, and she's borrowing equipment from Lana, aside from the boots, and that is the one thing I feel the need to point out, and that she should be wearing movement +1 boots. Here I'm equipping over Divine boots, and you don't have to use Divine boots, you can just use normal SR boots if you want to. Now having Jess built up at least a little bit can be helpful because she can do a decent bit of damage to the flyers, at least with Windblade. Alright, now let's get into the Mythical clear, and as you saw, my Mythical clear is going to be involving Yulia and Zerda, but there are actually a huge number of ways I think you can tackle this map using a Mythical team. So for this clear, of course, as you saw, I'm using the 3 SR and R characters that are available in the Mythical faction. The important thing here is that you need to, there are very specific equipment choices I made here that is going to make this clear possible. So first off, the teddy bear on Sophia isn't necessarily required, but it does help a lot. You know, it really varies based on how strong your Yulia is. And I think that my Yulia is like above average probably. So unless you have a really strong Yulia, not having the teddy bear is a bit of an issue. So here I cast Tornado on these enemies, and more importantly I get the Sage's Hat buff on Yulia because I don't want her to get stunned by the route attack from the Minotaur. So on this first enemy phase I need to get an RNG activation here. This RNG is basically what I need to happen is that I need this Mist Dancer to just attack Yulia. I can't have it use Cold Blood. If the Mist Dancer decides to use Cold Blood, she's just going to move out of the way and not melee attack Yulia, and she's not going to kill herself on Yulia, and that just causes all kinds of issues. So you might need to reset for this if you decide to try to copy my style. I mean, it's not so bad because it's right at the beginning of the fight. For the rest of the fight, I will not have any other RNG aspects to it. So at this point, you saw that my Yulia actually did not get heal blocked by that gargoyle on the right side at the beginning. This is actually not a big deal because my Yulia is strong enough to just kill that Minotaur anyway, even if she does not heal up after fighting the Minotaur. So I could have did the exact same move here using Discipline. So here I rewind the group, not including Yulia. Unfortunately, I cannot reach Yulia with the rewind at this point, and there's really no choice. I got a breeze on the Jessica, but as you saw, I only moved 4 spaces, which is her normal movement range. I'm not going to be taking advantage of breezes in this strategy. So here I cast Shield on Yulia, and by doing this, I no longer have to worry about any RNG from the heal block screwing me over. You know, Shield prevents heal block, so that is just going to make things a lot simpler. So Jessica's role here is of course similar to that of Alfred's I did in the first clear. She's just going to be kiting the enemies around. And here Yulia is of course just counterattacking this Hellhound. She is going to be losing her first life here, which is not a big deal because, you know, that's the great thing about Yulia. She can die 2 or 3 times and it's not an issue at all. So here is a bit of a stat check. I need Sophia to have enough HP and defense to actually survive this Flyer General attack plus his wind pressure. So you do need to have a fair bit of HP and chance, or HP or defense and chance, in order for Sophia to survive this. Before I actually like use different equipment, and Sophia could not survive even with Tri Maidens at level 10. But you need her to survive, and after that you can just take him out with Zerda here. Zerda does need to crit strike all the enemies in this fight in order to get the kills that she needs. But you know, I did record one instance earlier where I failed to crit an enemy, even though my Zerda has like a 95% crit rate, and that really pissed me off. But if your Zerda has a 100% crit rate, you don't have to run into this problem. So here, Almeida is just going to attack this Hellhound and weaken it a little bit more for Yulia to finish it off. So I'm getting ready for the rest of the enemies to come north and start charging at me. I need I need Zerda on the left side on the boat to sort of bait enemies that way, while everybody else just runs to the right and tries to avoid most of the enemies. So Zerda's got to prep Bloodthirster again. I need her to kill the Sky Archer next, and because that is probably the biggest threat at this point. Everybody else needs to run to the right and just try to avoid, especially avoid the Spatial Strike, because that would be awful. Of course, I got breezes again, but obviously, like I said, I'm not going to be taking advantage of them. I recast Shield on Yulia so that she does not get heal block. Strengthen, just getting ready to take out this Gargoyle here. So you're going to see that even though my Arjess is actually not that well built, she is actually going to deal a pretty decent chunk of damage to him by using Windblade, effective damage and everything. So Arjess, if your Arjess is well built, she's probably going to rip into this Gargoyle pretty well, and that might take some pressure off of some of your other units to finish it off. Also, Almeida has Sky Archers, of course. Sky Archers will also do a fair bit of damage to this bat. And finally, Yulia can just finish it off. So I decide to attack from 2 range. At this point, the Sheikah Mage can actually reach me. Sometimes it will do Spatial Strike and sometimes it will do Fireball. Fireball will take away a life from Yulia, but that's not a big deal. Spatial Strike will shuffle everybody all over the place, but that is not a big deal anymore because there's only 2 enemies left. And at this point, it is not a big deal. It's just cleanup time. There should be no trouble with this fight the rest of the way. So, in case you don't have Yulia or you don't have Zerda, I mean, there's really not that many mythical characters, so unfortunately, unless you have mythical characters built, it's pretty difficult to beat this map, obviously, or get this challenge at least. But one you might have built is Juggler. You can attempt to tank through this fight with just Juggler. Obviously, if you bring Regenerate on Sophia and use Juggler, you can try to just tank your way through this map. It can work because Juggler can be very tanky. If your Juggler is very tanky, you could just try to tank through this map. But of course, you want to bring, you might still want to bring Almeida with Shield so that you can stop Heal Block from getting onto Juggler, because that would be very, very bad. If you have Akaya can use her Wolf to distract, the same way I use Arjess to distract, but you can use a combination of Akaya plus Arjess even to make the kiting even more complex. Bozo, of course, can also kite with his summon. Bozo is just useful in general. He can crowd control with sleep. He can kite with summon, and he can just debuff with Earthquake in case you need some help tanking these enemies. You can bring Young Jessica if you want to. Young Jessica can help with healing and deal a bit of damage. I don't think Rainforest is terribly useful on this map, but you can also bring Shalinka. Shalinka can sometimes, if the enemies bunch up, Shalinka can probably one-shot quite a few of them quite easily. Yusuke is not that useful, I think. The problem with Yusuke is that these PvE enemies are just so stat inflated that it's going to be very difficult for even a top tier Yusuke to one-shot them, I think. Gizarov, of course, can buff everybody since it's a mythical map. And if you have Gizarov belt, of course, he also has a summon to just sort of kite the enemies around. That's about it. I mean, there are a number of choices you have to tackle this map, but obviously because the mythical faction is still a relatively small faction, your choices will be kind of limited. But hopefully this video has shown you that Sophia, of course, is very, very important for this map just because she is a very good healer. Almeida can be useful because of her debuffs and her for her support spells, and of course Arjess is here and can help kite the enemies. But as you saw, like, I just spent the rest of the time of this video just cleaning up these last 2 enemies, and it should really be no issue from this point on. I just need to finish off this Lancer General, and there's really no threat from him anymore. In case for some reason you cannot tank this Lance General, just remember, if you brought Sophia with Shrine Maidens, there's no reason Sophia should not be able to tank a hit from this Lancer. One last note I want to make is that the Hellhound can break Shrine Maidens because it does fix damage before battle, so you do need to be aware of that. You don't want your Sophia to be taking that Hellhound. But with that, this map is over. Hopefully you found this video useful, and I'll see you guys next time.